I wanted to make a video for beginning guitar players, and I wanted to show how to play the end riff of the song Black Sabbath. So I'll play that riff for you and then slow it down, and then I'll explain why I think it's such a great riff for beginning guitar players to learn. Here it is. Alright, I'll play it a little slower so you can see better how it goes. And I've put the tablature and sheet music, a link to it in the description of this video, so check there if you want tabs. Now, one of the reasons that I think that that's such a great riff for beginning guitar players to learn is that it's pretty easy because you don't use chords, you're just playing single notes at a time, at any one time. But at the same time, it uses different strings. You're using two different strings to play that riff, so that gives it a little bit of a challenge for new guitar players because they have to be able to pick the intended string. Also, it's a good riff because although it's meant to be played muted, it also sounds good if you haven't learned the muting technique. You can still play that riff without being muted and it still sounds good. So if you haven't learned the muted technique, what you want to do is put the palm or the side of the palm of your hand right on the bridge of your guitar. And you want it to kind of deaden the string. You don't want the string to resonate as much as it would normally. So when your hand is placed here on the strings, you get a nice muted sound out of the instrument as opposed to a ringing note. So you can hear hear the difference between the muting and not being muted. Now, when I learned to play guitar, there was only a couple of riffs that I knew, and so what I did is just played them all over the guitar, moved them into different places, and played them everywhere, just so that you know, I could get a different feel for different areas of the guitar, playing higher strings. Of course, you know, at that time I didn't know how to play any guitar solos, so I would take the couple of riffs that I knew and play them on the high E string, and that would kind of get me used to playing on those higher strings and some of the higher frets, which normally, you know, wouldn't come until much later. But you can start to develop that playing style of playing guitar solos just by taking your ordinary riffs and moving them to a higher string on the guitar. So that is also something that you may want to do if you don't know very many riffs and you're getting bored. Take the riffs that you already know, move them around to different places and hear how they sound different, and kind of get used to the different techniques it requires to play things on different strings or in different frets. The other thing that you can do, especially with that riff, is change up the fingering on it. So the way I've been playing is with my index finger and the middle finger, but you can actually change that around and play with different fingers and actually start to develop the strength and dexterity of different fingers on your hand, on your left hand. So for instance, I can play with my middle two fingers, or I can play with my pinky and second finger. So I can change the fingering around and play that same riff over and over using different fingers and work on the dexterity and the strength of all of my fingers as opposed to just the two that are required to play that riff. So you can do that to help to develop other fingers that you maybe don't use as much. The other interesting thing about that riff is that it should be played with a back and forth method of picking, or double picking. So that's where you pick the string going down and then pick it again as your hand comes back up. So like this. It's an efficient method of picking, but a lot of new guitar players are not comfortable with that technique. So until you use it, this is a riff that you can play with all down pick, which is how I learned to play guitar. Everything was a down stroke on the guitar, from the picking hand. So this particular riff from Black Sabbath gives you the technique to work on muting picking, your mute picking, also your double picking, and it's a good riff to use different fingerings on, so you can actually work on the strength and dexterity of using different fingers of your fretting hand. So learn the riff and enjoy it. It's a fun one. Play around with it. Hopefully it will help you with developing your guitar technique. If you have any questions or comments, please go ahead and leave them and I'll try to respond to you. Thanks.